Just make sure, can you give us a wave, Fran, to make sure that you guys can hear? Yep, great, excellent, fantastic. And we have our witnesses that are here. Thank you very much. So I shall officially begin. I declare open this public hearing of the House Standing Committee on Employment, Education and Training for the inquiry into digital transformation of workplaces. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we all meet and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge any First Nations people who may be participating in today's hearing or joining us online or in the committee room. In accordance with Committee Resolution 11 August 2022, this hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and proof and official transcripts of the proceedings will be published on the website as well. For those present today, are advised that filming and recording is permitted during the hearing. However, I remind members of the media who may be present or listening on the web of the need for fair and accurate reporting of the proceedings of the committee. For the benefit of our witnesses today, we have two committee members who have already joined us and others that will be joining throughout the hearing. We have the Honourable Anne Stanley, the member for Werriwa, and the Deputy Chair, the Honourable Terry Young, who's the member for Longman. I'll now proceed to calling our first witnesses for today's public hearing, representatives of the Digital Transformation Agency, to give evidence. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you are appearing before the committee?
Yes, good morning. I'm Lauren Mills, Branch Manager at the Digital Transformation Agency, responsible for strategy and AI policy.
And I'm Ben Leach. I am the Branch Manager at the Digital Transformation Agency, responsible for digital prioritisation and planning.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you witnesses at today's hearing to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing as proceedings of respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I'd now like to invite you to make an opening statement before we proceed to members' questions.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide this submission. We take the submission as read and don't really offer much more than to clarify that the role of the Digital Transformation Agency is around strategic and policy advice on whole of government digital and ICT investments. So it's really in that government context that we're here to talk to you about the transformation of workplaces today.
Okay. Well, thank you. What I might do then is just start with a few sort of opening questions to just sort of step through what is in your submission, just for the Hansard record. Can you just talk us through how digital technology and AI is currently being used within the Australian Public Service and what your role is within that transformation process?
Right. So the DTA has been co-leading the AI and Government Task Force with the Department of Industry, Science and Resource to look at and understand the opportunity and for innovation and the use of AI in the Australian government, as well as ensuring we can safely and responsibly use AI technologies. So that task force has been running for about not quite 12 months and has just recently concluded. Through that process, we have developed a number of pieces of guidance for APS to help them in their use of AI, particularly around the use of generative AI. We've developed some interim guidance, which is based on Australia's AI ethics principles, which is really about supporting public servants to know how to safely interact with these emerging technologies. We've also undertaken a 6-month trial of a trial of the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, which has been offered as part of the Microsoft Productivity Suite as an easy way for public servants to try out generative AI solution within their workplaces. And we are currently undergoing an evaluation of that product to prepare a report and also some industry briefings so we can share the learnings of findings from that trial. In terms of other elements the DTA will be taking forward now at the conclusion of the task force, we are developing an AI in government, a response policy for the responsible use of AI in government, which will be coming into effect from the 1st of September. We're just working through the finalisation process of that policy now. And we have a number of other, standards and guidance materials that will be developed as we go forward to support agencies in that use of AI. In terms of the first part of the question, the use of AI, we have looked, the task force did gather up as many use cases. We saw that while the most of use of AI is actually sort of more traditional forms of AI, machine learning, and it has been in place for some time. There are a number of use cases around things like service delivery chatbots supporting customer service, and a number of agencies. Obviously, as I said, we've had over 60 agencies look at the Copilot product. So there's a range of different opportunities in that productivity suite and supporting service delivery.
Can I just ask, in the work that you've done, can you just outline for us any sort of risks that you've been able to identify? You've sort of started to touch briefly on the opportunities, but could you just expand on both of those areas for us? Any of the risks and opportunities that you've already been able to identify with the use of Gen AI in the workplace?
So in terms of generative AI or publicly available generative AI, I think the risk that we've identified is the entering of classified information into a publicly available tool would be a problem, would be a risk for the government. And so that is why a strong focus within the interim guidance is around making it very clear that we should not be entering any official information into these tools. There's also some clear guidance around your accountability as a public servant. So you should always be able to explain, justify and take responsibility for your decisions as no matter what technology we use, whether it's AI or others, we are accountable for those decisions. So we've issued guidance around that particular risk, and I think maintaining that concept of a human in the loop in all of our decision making and that continuity of that accountability that rests with us has been a strong focus of our work.
I just also was wondering if you could outline for us through your process what concerns have staff, APS staff, possibly raised with you in the use of AI, if you've got any examples, and then how were these concerns being addressed?
I couldn't specifically point to any staff members that have raised risks. I think through some of our governance forums, we've looked at considerations around privacy and around records management have been some of the areas that we've focused on to understand better. I haven't had any specific, I don't have any knowledge of specific staff concerns being raised with the DTA. They may have raised them internally with their agencies, but I'm not aware of any.
I think
the CPS. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say. I think it's fair to say that early in the process there were concerns around the speed that the technology was taking hold in public, and therefore the lack of guidance that was available at the time. You know, at the kind of inception of ChatGPT, and once it became part of the general public's use, there was a lack of guidance within the APS, and I think that's part of the reason DTA have acted quickly to implement some interim guidance to provide some guardrails for agencies as their staff became familiar with the products.
We've received a submission from the CPSU, and so they're the union, of course, representing the Commonwealth public sector workers. And some of the concerns that they expressed were in relation to increased workplace surveillance, concerns about discrimination and lack of career growth. Do you have any sort of, feedback, or how have you those concerns been raised with you, how you're working to address those? Because it's not just concerns that we're hearing from the public sector union, but from workers in other workplaces as well.
So there's a few parts to that, I guess. So we could probably talk to them independently first. So in terms of the concerns regarding bias, one of the principles that's been established within the interim guidance for the APS on the use of generative AI is around fairness and human-centred values, and the importance of having processes and tools in place to ensure that biases that are inherent to some of the AI training material are not reflected in the outputs and then acted upon. So there are protections, I guess, within the system and guidance on how to start to address those risks. I couldn't say that those risks have been provided to us as direct feedback into the task force by the APS. On some of the other, could you just go through some of the other elements of the question, because I think there were a few subparts.
So we've just talked about sort of discrimination and sort of the language model. The other one of the concerns was around workplace surveillance and the use of Gen AI in workplace surveillance.
I can't say that one's been raised with us as a concern that needs to be acted on within the APS, but it is something that we could consider and bring back to conversations within the DTA. I think the other element that you mentioned was job progression. On that, I think the use of AI, I understand the kind of concerns that are being raised. I think the principles that we're looking through are more about how AI can free up the use of the public servant's time to be focused more on high cognitive tasks. So the ability to triage things like call centre tasks to allow the public servants who were doing the triaging to focus on how to help the customers reach a satisfying endpoint with their request. So in terms of career progression, I think there are opportunities for AI to actually fast track people into more high cognitive tasks and therefore, be able to move up those chains. There are other kind of elements that I think come into it with the use of AI as almost a study assist piece, where people who have joined with especially digital skills in really particular areas can use AI to fast track their learning in different areas, opening themselves up to more job opportunities. Programming languages is a really good example where AI is really adept at translating coding languages, meaning that somebody who comes in with maybe Python skills could pick up COBOL using AI to kind of fast track that learning. So where there are these concerns, there's also opportunities. And I think where the DTA is focused so far is examining the opportunities that are available to us and providing guidance on how agencies can best engage with those opportunities.
The last question I had before we go to Ms. Stanley is just in relation to graduate entry-level jobs. In our hearing last week, we had a couple of the witnesses talk about one of the risks with Gen AI is it does those graduate entry-level work. Say an architect, for example, it does the simple planning, the simple work or tasks that for people just leaving university, that's really the foundation, the building blocks for them to be able to progress in their career. The Australian Public Service is a big employer of graduates. If Gen AI, if these tools do a lot of that entry-level work, how can we ensure that we are still recruiting and properly training young graduates who do that work as part of their career progression?
Me? Yep. I'd like to think that in terms of the graduates and cadets who come into the public service, things like minute taking during meetings, the use of AI to join meetings and take your minutes allows the graduates and trainees to be more engaged in the topic of the meeting rather than the note taking around the edges. So if anything, I think it actually helps them become more part of the thinking process that goes into the work. I wouldn't say that AI in its current use within government is actually replacing any tasks, but speeding up tasks, which would allow graduates to get more exposure to more things more quickly, because the medial tasks take less time. It doesn't take away from the need for them to be involved as that human in the loop to make sure that the minute taking and the first drafting is accurate and reflective of the strategic goals that the government is trying to set. So I think it's, if anything, it's probably allowing them to be more involved in more opportunities to pick up skills within the APS more quickly. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Look, I agree. I think what we're seeing in terms of the capabilities of these productivity suites, summarisation of documents, minute taking, as Ben has talked about, but that all of those things still require a human to review and check them for accuracy. So it's really just about enhancing that or taking away some of the manual work, allowing people to do other work. So in our experience, we're seeing there's a lot of focus still on graduates into the APS, particularly digital. There's a lot of pathways that are available, and we've not seen any evidence that it's impacting that in a change yet. I think just again to reinforce the question earlier around the use cases within what we've seen from our consultations through the task force and with the DTA is really the predominant use of AI is really in that predictive analytics space, which still requires very highly skilled and trained people with tools to do that work. So it's still very much an exploring in the generative AI space.
Okay, Ms. Mackenzie's also joined us. She's a member for Flinders. We'll now go to Ms. Stanley, who's got some questions. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you very much for your evidence this morning. I've got a couple of questions. Ms. Mills, you discussed there'd always be a human in the loop. Can you expand on what you mean about that? So at what point, what training is going to be given to that human in the loop? Do you intend to put into the AI process a stop? So you go this far and then a human would be included. Are you thinking about policies around what your expectation? Because I'm assuming that your job in your agency is to identify the risks, as Lisa asked you, and the positive things. So how are you thinking about that happening?
The concept of human in the loop is a principles-based approach. So in terms of how it's applied with specific AI use cases, that would vary on the specific need within that. I guess I'll take a step back and talk a little bit more about the AI ethics principles are really around ensuring that accountability, transparency, explainability of our decisions as public servants. It's reinforcing that despite the technology and its capabilities or potential capabilities, that responsibility and accountability does not change. So whether it's at what point in the process a human is required to review, whether it's a decision or a document or whatever the specific example might be, that it's ensuring the outcome is that the decision is made by a human and there is that accountability. So in terms of how we practically applying that and supporting that process, one of the areas that the DTA has been focusing on with the task force is the development of an AI assurance framework, which has been exploring as part of the looking at things like the New South Wales Government AI assurance framework and how we can take that and apply it at the Commonwealth level and really look at how do we in practice enable the assessment of AI use cases and the impact and the risks around them and what governance and risk mitigations are appropriate to be put in place to ensure that accountability remains. So we're providing practical support in the assessment of those AI use cases as they arise. And certainly I think there and with that becomes that aspect of high risk, medium risk, low risk use cases, which would mean different governance and different controls were required around them.
Okay. The potential that low risk becomes high risk over multiple uses should be something that is considered. Is it being?
Yes. So the concept is not a set and forget with any new technology, and certainly with AI, it is around monitoring and evaluation, not just through the development and implementation of an AI solution, but then ensuring that it's continuing to act as expected. There are a range of, opportunities to explore how we set standards around those monitoring and evaluation approaches to ensure that consistency across government, which is one of the areas we'll be focusing on going forward.
Okay. In the last century, when I joined the banking industry, to be able to review a process, there was this old-fashioned idea you needed to understand what the process was, so that if you were auditing something, you're being able to do the task and having done that task over and over again gave you insight into where an error may be, where there is a potential for risk or a break in the process. So I can still look at a number of figures that don't balance and figure out where it is because I have that experience. Ms. Chester's asked a question about new graduates and the graduate program. If they are doing the review but don't understand what they're reviewing and the reasons for it, is that a potential opportunity for concern and something that needs to address? I'm just a bit, I suppose my concern comes from you only know what you know. So you can review, an AI program may do 100 decisions and you spot review 5 of them. How do you know the other 95 are okay? How do you, what is going to be built into this system that's going to make sure that there are not an error? Because, ultimately government decision-making affects our individual humans. So we don't want one mistake at all, because that could mean that there is a catastrophic issue for that one person. I'm just wondering how, and I mean, it might be okay for these graduates in the next 2 to 5 years, but when AI is embedded and it's been around for a long time and that experience is lost, then what happens?
I think with the principles that have been outlined in the interim guidance, Lauren talked about accountability. When we talk more about transparency and explainability, it's more to do with the breaks within the system to understand what each function is doing. I don't think what the DTA would recommend to government would be that new graduates could take on a role as the human in a loop in a process for which they had not been trained in. what we're looking at is people who are highly trained and specialists in making decisions in their field, using AI to speed up the process by which they can make those decisions, provide extra rigor into the decision-making process, further analytics of the evidence that helps them make those decisions, rather than having AI replace that decision-making and then be verified by a human. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Absolutely. I think, like all new technology or technological change, we anticipate that the increased adoption of AI will bring a whole raft of suite of new skills and capabilities that the APS will need to build. So that is absolutely a focus, is making sure that people who are in these roles, who have the responsibilities, have the appropriate level of skill and capability and training to perform that task. I think whether it's AI or another technology, that remains the same.
Okay, just one last question, if I could, Lisa. Are you intending to put that explanation that you just gave us, which is perfectly reasonable and understandable, as part of the recommendations of any use of AI in the Australian government?
I mentioned earlier the introduction of the policy for the responsible use of AI in government. That will look at all of these. That will look at a number of these, how we address a number of these concerns, and certainly that capability side of things, ensuring we assess all of these use cases, assess the application and implementation of AI solutions in an appropriate way, is absolutely part of what we would recommend.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time today. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Anne. We'll now go to the Deputy Chair, Mr. Young.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Terry.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Don't we already sort of use AI in the corporate world and in government, like banking institutions, and Ian to be aware of this, financial institutions, when someone puts in an application online, these payday lenders and things like that, a human being doesn't review it. They just automatically approve or don't approve based on it anyway. So there's a AI making, or a computer making, a decision on finance. And not to bring up something that I'm not particularly proud of, but robo-debt, wasn't that already a form of AI where computers were making decisions on things that affected people? So have we already got that? And if we've already got it in place, wouldn't we already have legislation and guardrails around this stuff?
I think in the I understand DISA were here yesterday, and I think they would have talking about the interim response to the 2023 paper. I think in that paper it was identified that there were up to 10 pieces of existing legislation that had impacts on the use of AI in government. So there is a framework that currently exists. In different jurisdictions, there are specific AI legislation where in Australia it's more dispersed across existing structures. So it's not that we're without legislative protections currently. In terms of the use cases, yes, there are existing use cases. I think what's really spiked the public interest in AI is the release of more large language models and the public availability of these tools. So when you talk about the things that have been in place for a while, like chatbots, these are built on machine learning. These are coded principles. The change has been these introduction of these public tools that are continuously learning from public information. So the approach has necessarily had to change. And with the kind of the public availability of the tools comes the expectation, I think, and rightly so, from all types of employees, that if these tools are there to benefit them in their private life, that they might be able to find use for them in their public or in their employment. And what the DTA has looked to do really rapidly is produce some guardrails to help do that in a safe and responsible way as to not cause any public damage.
So in your understanding of these guardrails that we currently have, because I suppose to put it in layman's terms, my greatest fear of this is that where we have AI making decisions, then who's culpable if a wrong decision is made and people are harmed? Because at the end of the day, that is what stops people from making bad decisions. Well, in theory, it should be part of the reason people don't make bad decisions is because they don't want to have ramifications if they make decisions that affect people's lives. If you can just deflect that and say, well, AI did it, then where does that go? Like that's my concern in this whole thing. Like I'm into new technologies that help save us time and all that sort of thing, but I worry about the personal responsibility aspect. Who is going to take responsibility if AI is doing this?
So I think that concern is one shared by many people, but I think in the context of what we've told you here today and through our submission, in terms of the public sector, APS, there is no expectation that you will be able to say AI made the decision. This is the guardrails that we put in place, the ethics principles, the golden rules that sit within the interim guidance very clearly say you have the accountability and responsibility for your decisions, and you must be able to explain and justify and take accountability for those decisions. So if an AI solution is supporting decision making, it is still on, we are beholden as public servants to take accountability for that and be able to explain that decision. That has not changed, and that I don't and will not change.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I'll just see if Ms. Mackenzie has any questions. Okay, I just picking up just on what the Deputy Chair had, just to follow up, if I could just use an example, because this is sort of where we're grappling with. We're just finished and are doing our report for our previous inquiry, which is Gen AI in education. And in that we talked about sort of, making sure that the users got the skills to be able to use the Gen AI appropriately. So the scenario is a kid says to ChatGPT, why are the stars so bright in the sky? There's a scientific based answer for that. But the kid says, why is my mummy upset? That could spit out any kind of answer. How do you ensure that the public servant using the Gen AI is realising or has the skills to be able to, make sure it's fact and not theory, ideas, like the idea that everything that this technology says is factually based isn't the case. So how are we ensuring that original work is coming through our public service so that briefs that are coming forward, policy advice that is coming forward is actually based in fact and not opinion, so to speak, which can quite often be spat out by a ChatGPT?
I think there's, just before I get to that, I just want to make sure that we were clear on the last question from the Deputy Chair. When the question of Robodebt came up, Robodebt is an example of automated decision making, not necessarily AI. Just to make that separation while we focus on AI for the purpose of the hearing. In terms of the question around the information coming back from AI tools, one of the things that is very important is the training base of the information that is pumped into the tools to actually train them up to make decisions. In most cases that I think will become eventually common play within public service, these tools are being trained on internal data. The AI models will obviously require frequent checking and refinement, as models can generally learn from their own results. So then there'll need to be rigorous processes built into the back end to refine models over time, update data, and do risk assessments on the outputs. So I think it's as much as AI tools can continuously learn, it is the responsibility of the people training and providing these tools to continuously refine and continuously check that there are no biases creeping into the system.
Just to clarify, so that is welcome news to me that it's only our like the public service, the Commonwealth's own data going in to train these tools. Say the national curriculum, could something very similar be done? Just the national curriculum be pumped into a tool so that therefore, it is just could questions could just be asked and the answers come from, say, the national curriculum.
So I should make sure it's clear that the tools that are available to people to use currently, if a user was to log onto the internet and jump onto ChatGPT, that is not government trained material,
Yeah.
but there is the opportunity for tools that we use within the public service to be trained on public service material. So there is a differentiation that we should make. There would be possibilities for the education sector to create or to train specific AI tools on specific sets of material from the curriculum to ensure that's possible as well.
And the same, say, for Services Australia, and we have one of the most complicated social safety nets in the world. Could a similar thing be done with Centrelink and Services Australia?
I would expect so, but I probably wouldn't want to provide an answer on their behalf. As you said, there's lots of complexities. We wouldn't want to simplify it on behalf of our colleagues.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to see, we've got our next witnesses that have sort of almost ready to go. I just wanted to see, as a final question, was there anything else that you wanted to add to, or any other further comments that you'd like to make just in sort of concluding our hearing this morning in relation to what we've discussed?
Nothing further from me. I think just thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today.
Okay. Well, thank you. I would like to thank thank you for your attendance today. If being asked to provide any additional information, please forward to the Secretariat by the 26th of July, 2024. You'll be sent a copy of your transcript of your evidence, and we'll have the opportunity to request any corrections to transcript errors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to check. We do appear to have Safe Work Australia who've already joined us. Can I just double check to see if you're good to go? Our representatives from Safe Work Australia. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Great.
good to go. Thank you.
Okay. And we might as well keep rolling. So I welcome representatives of Safe Work Australia to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you are appearing before the committee?
Yes, so it's Mary Boland, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Safe Work Australia. And I've got two other people with me.
Sinead McHugh, Acting Branch Manager, WHS Framework and Workers' Compensation Policy.
And Catherine Taylor, Director of Psychosocial Policy.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require witnesses at today's hearing to give evidence under oath, I would advise you that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standings as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false and misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I'd now like to invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to members' questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the inquiry on this important topic. As you know, the rise of artificial intelligence and other new technologies is a significant issue for workplaces, and it's recognised as a key emerging challenge in the Australian Work, Health and Safety Strategy 2022 to 2033. It's an issue that Safe Work Australia is monitoring very closely, and we are committed to working collaboratively with our member organisations and other key stakeholders to ensure work health and safety policy and regulation continues to support health and safety at work in the face of this rapid change. This includes growing our understanding of how technology is changing work, the work environment and work processes, and ensuring that persons conducting a business or undertaking, which includes employers, develop the capability to understand and meet their work health and safety duties and responsibilities as the digital transformation of workplaces takes place. So firstly, just a little bit of context that it might be helpful for me to clarify our role. Safe Work Australia is a tripartite national work health and safety policy body representing the interests of the Commonwealth, states and territories, as well as workers and employers. So we develop and maintain the model work health and safety laws with the aim of harmonising work health and safety regulation across Australia. The model laws must be implemented by jurisdictions as their own work health and safety laws to be legally binding. And all jurisdictions except Victoria have implemented a version of the model laws. So we're not a regulator. I think that's probably the important point of difference. We're not a regulator of work health and safety laws. The jurisdictions are responsible for regulating and enforcing the laws in their own jurisdictions. And so an important point too, and in the context of the inquiry, is that in the work health and safety space, the model work health and safety laws are designed to be flexible and capable of dealing with changing work and workplaces, including digital transformation. Under the model laws, persons conducting a business or undertaking, including employers, have a primary duty to protect the health and safety of workers at work and other people who may be affected by the work. When new technology is introduced to a workplace, persons conducting a business or undertaking must manage both physical and psychosocial risks to health and safety, just as they would with any other hazard or risk. And in managing risks, they must consult with workers and provide information, training and support to workers to make sure they are safe at work. Existing guidance and information, in particular the Model Code of Practice on Managing Psychosocial Hazards, can assist businesses to effectively manage work health and safety risks related to the use of technology. The model laws also include duties for designers, manufacturers, importers and suppliers of the plant, including software, to ensure this plant is without risk to persons who are at the workplace. However, as recognised in the Australian Work Health and Safety Strategy, the model framework will be tested over the next 10 years on a number of fronts, including by the digitisation of workplaces, and may require updates to keep pace. We continue to work closely with our members and other key stakeholders to identify if there are aspects of work health and safety duties that require further clarification in the context of how work is changing, how work is done is changing, and how the workplace is changing. And that includes digitisation. We're also aware that there's much work going on across government and the non-government sectors in relation to digitisation of workplaces, and work health and safety is part of a bigger ecosystem. Anything we do needs to be considered in this broader context so that we are leveraging and contributing to a comprehensive and consistent response. We're certainly looking forward to the findings of your inquiry and the contributions it will make to guiding our efforts into the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that opening statement. We're going to go first to the Deputy Chair. Mr. Young has a few questions.
Thanks so much, Chair. Thank you for your time today. Can I just ask, when you talk about workers' safety with AI, can you give me some practical examples where you could see what sort of issues could arise from AI that don't currently arise in the workforce? I'm thinking that there couldn't be too many physical issues, because unless, you know, AI becomes a Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger goes into your workplace, but I would have thought it would have been more around the mental health aspect. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, look, I think, thank you for that question. Yeah, I was thinking about this last night, and I think fundamental to this will be the management of psychosocial hazards that arise from digitization. And some of that is around, the issue of work that might become quite repetitive or that has, minimum challenges, I guess, for the human. Also, the issue of work being managed by systems of algorithms and digital management, so to speak, and other issues around not having human contact, perhaps, in a workplace. And they all really link quite fundamentally to what we talk about in the psychosocial and risk management area of, job control, and organizational design, and, the ability to feel like your work has value, and there's organizational strategies, processes, and justice, I guess, that workers have a fundamental role in. So yeah, I think the hazards will be to a large extent, in that psychosocial space.
So, because I'm just trying to understand, because we face this pretty well the whole 20th and 21st century, really, because, it's been the last 100 years has been incredible in automation, and we've seen lots and lots of jobs be made redundant or become more isolated because they become more automated. This is not new to AI, is it? So, I'm just trying to understand practically, like just an example of what could actually happen in a manufacturer, a retail business, a workshop, or whatever. I'm just trying to get a scenario in my head where AI could actually have an effect on a worker. I'm not saying it's not there. I just can't think of one myself.
Yeah. Look, I'll just hand over to my colleague here, Catherine, and she can provide a scenario for you.
Yeah, great.
So I wouldn't suggest that the hazards from AI are fundamentally different to other hazards we're faced, but they can change the way work is designed and managed, what the tasks are. And so that can lead to physical risks, and that can lead to psychosocial risks. Physical risks, if you change the job, you may make it more physical. You may take away some of the thinking work, which might lead to certain musculoskeletal disorders and hazardous manual tasks. You might change the work in that way. You might change the work demands and the stresses involved. And then, of course, when you're creating stress for workers or others, that can lead to a range of physical hazards, including violence, aggression, and things of the sort. So I guess AI is just changing the way we work. The hazards and the way you manage them in terms of those fundamentals, identifying, consulting, controlling the hazards, it's largely the same, but work will change.
Yeah, and I suppose, to your point, I mean, that's the message I guess we're trying to send and to kind of reinforce today, is that while its digitization is making change, the fundamental approach to work health and safety management will be the same. So it's, to your point, it's the approach to managing risks and the health and safety in your workplace arising from new ways, new software, whatever, will be the very same as when we manage the risks to, guarding machinery or other risks, other hazards in a workplace. So, I guess that's a key message we want to get across today, is fundamentals of health and safety risk management are designed to deal with change. And, the model framework has been tested quite a bit since the laws came in and has stood up to that challenge. So while we may have to look at down the track, obviously we need to keep monitoring it, but at the moment we feel that the framework, the flexibility is there, the approach is there, and it's probably more about reminding workers and employers and workplaces that the tools are there. They just need to use them, and remind them of those fundamental foundations of work and safety management.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, because look, I'm very conscious of the balance between making sure that workers are looked after, but also not over complying businesses with more red tape and just something else to go through. And if we've already got things in place that will sort out the issues that we're going to have with AI, then I say don't rewrite the book. Let's just make sure. And as you say, I think it's more that people know they've got the tools. You know, I've been in businesses where a new computer system's come in and people, you know, they go, oh my God, and they struggle with it. And some people get very frustrated. Some people adapt. Normally the people under 30, but the people over 50 have a bit more of a struggle with any new sort of computer system because they're used to the old way. But that's been a common problem that's not just going to arise out of AI. That's been around for probably 20, 30 years now. So it's just more, do we need any new legislation? Can you see any holes that currently exist? Or do you think that the current legislation that we have in place around the country will suffice?
Look, I think there's definitely areas that we need to work on and we are currently working on. And one of those is obviously the gig economy area where we're grappling with the use of...
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, so I might ask Sinead to come in because she's eager for its answer.
No, we're just around crowd platforms, so your Airtasker type of platforms where they help, I suppose, bring together the worker and the end user, just clarifying WHS duties around that. So that's what we're looking at currently, and we know that crowd platforms use ADR to help us with that algorithm management. But yeah, that's what we're looking at. Supposed to go to. Mara's point is that we do have a robust framework, and it's just making sure that having that eye and monitoring it.
And also, I think our job too is to really lift capability. Because a lot of these duties and obligations have been around for since the 1980s, but with the model laws since early 2000s. But we still have a lot of work to do in general anyway to educate people. And so I guess that's an opportunity for us too in the context of the digital transformation is to reinvigorate the conversations around safety and how we manage it. But yeah, to the point of the question, we feel at the moment that the structure is good, the framework is good, but we're conscious all the time of monitoring. And in that context, I might just mention too that we're about to reinvigorate our research program at Safe Australia. So we're just in the process of employing a director of research and establishing a strategy again. And I would see AI as being the central focus of that research into the future. But also, it's not just about academic research, it's about evaluation of how the laws are working practically. So again, that's an opportunity for us to really evaluate whether our laws are fit for purpose in the changing environment. But as I said, they're standing up very well, and we feel the framework is a good one. And no matter what changes are happening, really, the flexibility is there.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, I'm sure there'll be problems that we haven't even thought about, but we'll do our best to make sure we get proactive in this. But thank you for your response.
I had a couple of questions before. I'll see if Ms. Stanley and Ms. McKenzie have questions. One of the growing areas of concerns from some workers has been around surveillance and the use of AI in surveillance. I was just wondering whether in the work that you do with states and territories in implementing sort of workplace health and safety, if that issue has come up, and what recommendation, discussions, suggestions have come about to sort of address those concerns?
Yeah, look, certainly that's been one of the big ticket items that has come up in the context of AI. And as I said, I think I signalled earlier, what that links into is particularly issues around low job control, can also lead to situations of bullying, harassment. But again, I think what the approach we're taking, and in the conversations with members, it's really focusing back on then the management of psychosocial hazards, consultation with workers. I mean, that's key, and I think that's one area that we will really be focusing on is reinforcing that in all the change and the management of change, the key issue is consultation with your workers. So making sure that things are not being done to workers, but that any changes are being made in with workers. And I think there was an article only this week, I think from research by David Peets, who highlighted that workplaces where workers have been involved in change have the best success rates in adapting to AI. So it's certainly an issue, and it's on the radar and very much central to the conversations that Australia is having with members.
So it's on the radar.
Chair, can I come in on that after you finish, just on this point?
Yeah. So it's on the radar, but do you know if any jurisdiction has gone down the path of implementing particular guidelines, particular advice? Have any cases been brought forward to the relevant workplace health and safety authorities? And are they ready, or do they have the resources to be able to manage this conflict that may occur?
Okay, Catherine will answer that one.
So it's an issue we have addressed in the model code on managing psychosocial hazards at work. So you'll see there's examples of it under low job control. It's not fundamentally different whether someone sits behind you with a clipboard monitoring and checking on what you've done, whether it's done by technology. That's still that sense of micromanagement and removing control, the stress that it brings. And so these are, issues that already form the basis of our codes, of our the psychosocial regulations as well. These are issues that they must consider in the design, management, and supervision of work. So any PCBU should be reading the code and following the code and its processes, and in doing so, they will manage to address these issues. If you're bringing in new surveillance technology, PCBUs must consult workers on the hazards and how they're managed.
Deputy Chair, did you have a question in relation to this topic before I switched?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Chair, thank you. I'm intrigued by this. So when we're in an age where we're trying to increase productivity so we're competitive in a global market, how do we get this balance between respecting employees' rights to privacy and employers' rights to ensuring that they're getting the maximum productivity out of their employees when they're paying them?
So under the psychosocial regulations and the Act, employers must identify the risks in consultation with workers, and they must eliminate them or minimise them so far as is reasonably practical. And so that reasonably practical element comes into making those balances between the level of the risk and other business considerations like productivity. Often in that consultation with workers have great ideas of what would actually minimise the risk for them. It's often not the technology itself, but it's how it's managed and implemented. I don't know that, for example, I'd be too concerned about technology that tracked me, but I would definitely be concerned if that was, say, linked to my bonus or my performance ratings and other things of the sort, if it was likely to get me fired in an unfair and unjust way, because the technology spotted that I wasn't clicking my mouse for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, so I'm thinking more of say a scenario, you've got a travelling salesman, and they're employed to do a run to Rockhampton and back, 1 week every 6 weeks. And before this, it was just a matter of trust. And now that there's AI and they've got an app on their phone that checks their productivity, and their boss sees that instead of going to Rockhampton and calling it a Bundaberg on the way home, they just skip Fridays and they don't ever go into. So previously, they would never have known that, but now the employer goes, well, hang on a minute, I'm paying you to work 5 days a week, and you're actually skipping off, and you're only working 4 days. But they wouldn't have known that if they hadn't encroached on their privacy. So where does it stand there? That sort of thing. And that's just a broad example, but I'm sure that, because what employers will be trying to do, of course, is they'll be measuring things to try and see how they can improve it. And if they've got multiple employees, they'll be saying, well, look, hey, this person does this or that person does that, and it's a better way because they're trying to maximise the use of the person's time. So what do we do there? What would be the legal ramifications there? Like if that employer said, hey, mate, you're a goof off, you're out the door, what would happen there? Would that be an unfair dismissal case because they've gotten rid of them because they played hooky for a day?
Oh, look, I think, that just comes back to, again, like the point I was making where work health and safety is the same and the principles apply to, to AI and digitization in the same way. It's the same within industrial relations. So, I mean, you would be presumably managing that in the context of, the contract of employment and what's required, as part of your work. And so I think, and I think there was an unfair dismissal recently that I had a look at, and it wasn't. It was a kind of a surveillance type thing, but it wasn't actually found to be unfair because, in a way, the issue wasn't the digitization or the tracking. It was the fact that someone had, breached their contract and had, so if somebody's skiving off, I mean, you're still managing that in the same way as, if somebody breaches their contract in any other situation, I think. I mean, the point there, I suppose you're making is you know about it where you might not have known about it before.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. And employees be going, hang on a minute, I don't want Big Brother watching me. I can understand all that. You know what I mean? That's what Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that is I suppose, the big unknown challenge that we have to keep an eye on. There's another example I was given was about managing fatigue. So, a kind of a software thing that could measure the blinking of your eyes, And so while it was done in the context of keeping people safe, it was quite intrusive, that if you don't blink, regularly, that somehow, you'll be hauled into the management. But again, I think that reinforces that there are areas that we do need to keep an eye on. And that links to the point about, whether it could lend itself to, bullying or harassment or, unjust management outcomes. It's,
yep.
Yeah. So I'm not saying, while we're saying the framework is good and we feel it's up to the job at the moment, I get that's the point about we do need to monitor and see, well, what is it being used for, and what is the impact in the workplace over the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No worries. Are there any particular industries that Safe Work Australia is more concerned of in terms of the AI rollout? Because it's rolling out slightly differently in different industries. Say with manufacturing or processing work, it would be different to jobs that are more desk-based or jobs that have become more work from home. Yeah. So are there any particular industries that Safe Work Australia is concerned about and working with jurisdictions on how best to mitigate the risks in those sectors?
Yeah, look, currently one of our big areas of focus is healthcare and social assistance. Sinead might just talk you through that because we're looking at, having a good look at that industry at the moment, and AI will come into that. So Sinead can talk us through that.
Oh, yeah. So we're just developing a model code of practice for healthcare and social assistance. And I suppose through that, we'll be looking at, the management of risks that arise from platform work. So it's one, example of AI, but I know as well that there are submissions even to this inquiry itself that from, healthcare industries that have raised AI and whatnot. So I suppose that can also be just, considered generally in terms of what should the code be addressing. That can also through consultation as well. But I think in general about main industries, we know that it's going to be affecting across all types of workplaces and job industries. And I suppose, as you said before, there's healthcare, potentially manufacturing, education and retail. So I suppose wait and see, is there any particular issues that arise in a particular industry that may require, I suppose, a bit more guidance or information from us, I suppose, at a national level. It's, again, that'd be part of our monitoring.
Sorry. Go.
I was just going to say, like with all new technologies, it tends to be the bigger companies, the international companies that start to roll it out first. So early concerns coming through about Amazon, coming through about Woolworths, coming through from, I guess, those bigger, larger companies. Is there, do you know of any cases that are being brought forward yet in relation to Gen AI and some of those bigger companies in any of the jurisdictions?
I'm not aware of any at this point. No. Sorry, I was just going to say, in the context of retail, we are just about to have our first meeting of around a retail industry round table where we're all employers, unions, and myself and others are. I think we're meeting in June. Now, one of the key focuses is occupational violence, but I'm pretty sure AI will come up in that context as well. So while we're not aware of any particular issues, specific issues at the moment, like we say, the industry groups are beginning to focus their minds on it, and we'll be very much part of that as it goes along in terms of any work health safety issues.
We saw in higher education this sector kind of lean into the adoption of Gen AI pretty quickly. They sort of decided to come together as a sector to say, we need to do something about this, not just from a staff perspective, but from a student perspective. Have you seen any other industries sort of come together in that way to say, look, or any of the big sort of corporates sort of come together to say, hey, look, we really want to see, best practice, adoption, kind of self-regulation. Have they sort of put their hand up to say, look, this is where we're at and this is what we're doing?
It's not something they would necessarily draw us into in the first instance. I think, there might be more sensitive information about their practice. They don't want to draw in either Safe Work Australia or perhaps regulator while they explore those issues.
I mean, the most probably I can say to that is, like as Katrin says, they tend not to bring us in the early stages while they're working things out. But when I did attend a mining forum recently, I was invited to, and it's clear that in mining, it's not so much generative AI, but the actual use of AI processes and things is moving. Yeah, so I think to your point, some of the big, particularly multinationals, the big companies are certainly moving quite quickly on this. So we need to be on our toes. Yeah, keep an eye on.
And my final question, just sort of on stemming from that, when these new technologies are introduced, it's really the HR person that's kind of responsible for the day-to-day operation of it. Sometimes it's more sort of a supervisor or local site management. Is there any sort of focus or encouragement or concerns around the skill that they may have and ensuring that they've had that ethical training, that sort of scaling up to make sure that they're reading and using the adaptive technology appropriately?
Well, look, what I would emphasise, I guess, in response to that question is that it shouldn't be just left to HR and that there should be absolutely a work health and safety focus on the introduction of any of these new technologies. So, that's one thing I guess we've been trying to, particularly in the context of psychosocial risks, is to really put the focus away from HR and which tends then to be about the individual worker, and place it more in the work health and safety context, which tends to be more about the organisation itself and the culture of an organisation. And also in the work health and safety space, this comes back to that key issue about consultation of workers. So I guess in terms of capacity building and education, I'd be hoping that that message would get across, that this isn't HR responsibility, this is a responsibility for the leadership of companies, and it's about culture and talking to your workers and ensuring that you have safe systems of work, effective consultation, genuine consultation, and I'd be coming at it very much through that work health safety lens and not HR.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to give you a moment just to see if there was anything further that you wish to add today, just sort of in summary with what we've discussed.
Look, I don't think you have anything. No, I think probably just that message of, that it is, these things are work health safety issues, and that there is a framework there. And we were to say where the key thing would be starting with consultation with your workers and taking it from there.
And I do appreciate that quite often with WorkSafe Australia, you tend to be more of the reactionary as much as we try to be as forward thinking and forward landing as we can. It's quite often once an issue occurs that we then draw Safe Work Australia in and Workplace Health and Safety to address that. So I do want to acknowledge the work that you do as much as possible to be forward thinking, but it can be hard until you actually have the problem or challenge in front of you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attendance today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, which I don't believe you have, please forward to the Secretary by Friday the 26th of July 2024. You'll be sent a copy of your transcript of your evidence and we'll have an opportunity to request any corrections to transcript errors. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance today and also thank members of the committee for their participation in this public hearing, and I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.